4, 3, 2, 1. We're live. I'm Gary Peter Carlson with John of Light. This is our video number 9. Our main purpose is to expose the people ruling us. They have human bodies, human DNA, the same as us, but they have reptilian souls. And they're working together to control humanity. We're trying to expose the reptilian souls. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, hey Gary. I go by John of the Light, and Gary and I have started doing a few videos to try to get a lot of spiritual research out to the world, and mostly following Gary's incredible research, which you can find online at icheckyoursoul.com. And I recommend, everyone find their way there. And we're both long-standing researchers. We've been doing this for over 15 years, and we happen to cross paths probably on the benjaminfulford.net website, and quickly became friends, and now we're doing quite a lot together, Gary and I. And Gary's research is fairly shocking to a lot of people, and I think hard for a lot of people to want to accept. But if it is the truth, it's going to be probably the shocking research ever done. It's probably going to be one of the most shocking discoveries ever made in humanity. And I don't know, you want to pick up on that for a second?
Yes, if you notice, if you listen to the mainstream media and you're a clever researcher and listen and digging up what the other researchers have come up with, you'll find out that the mainstream media constantly lies. I mean, a country puts in a good leader that's good for the people, making policies where everybody has better lives and they make more money, and it shuts out the USA companies that are owned by these people with reptilian souls. They don't do as good, so they send a bunch of people in that country and claim there's something wrong with that leader that's not true, like he's a Marxist or he's a communist or
right,
he's a pedophile or something outrageous that's not true. And they have like maybe 500 or 1,000 low-level people with reptilian souls on the street protesting, and they grab a few people and pay them money to protest with them, and they get the leader thrown out of office, and they put in a person from that country that has a reptilian soul, or a person from that country that'll take money and do what the people with reptilian souls in the United States wants. And they overthrew countries in South America for United Fruit Company. They overthrew the leader of Iran and put the Shah in years ago. You remember they had a war in Grenada. They had a leader in Grenada that was doing good for the people, but it wasn't wasn't good for the reptilians, so they caused the big war over there and sent in military and everything, and they lied their ass off all over the media, claiming they were doing the right thing, and even convinced like Ronald Reagan or whoever was president to back them and all that stuff.
Starting to come out. It's starting to come out more and more mainstream. You and I were talking just the other day about an interview that RFK Jr. did with, God, who was it? It was, the Fox News guy. The most famous reporter from Fox News. Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson, yeah.
Sorry, RFK Jr. just had this, one, might have been more than one, but at least one big interview with Tucker. And he said that he knows with certainty from the facts and the data, he knows that the United States have overthrown at least 83 countries, governments.
Right. And same country twice a lot.
Right. And I think it's way more than 83. RFK Jr. was simply using the number 83 because he could prove it.
And this is set in World War II.
Okay. And, another interesting fun fact is how many countries they have central banks in, because that pretty much tells you how many countries that this globalist Western elite banking cabal has overthrown, because they've taken over the government and they have typically raped the country of their natural resources and installed a puppet dictator or a puppet president. And then they have somehow bribed and blackmailed and murdered their way into convincing the government to allow them to take over their monetary system. So they install a new central bank in that country, and now they print their own money in that country too.
They have that country take loans to build up infrastructure that only benefits the reptilian companies that are mining or harvesting the resources.
Right.
And then they have that country owe the loan. And then when that country can't pay the loan because their people can't be taxed enough, they steal the resources that way to pay for the loan, or they got other scams, something like that.
Right. And in a total jacking, right? Call it a complete effing of the country. They take it over. They set up their own central bank. They bring in all of their big corporations, their international corporations, to essentially help them rape the country of their natural resources. They set up the central bank, and then they start loaning the country loans from their own central bank from their own country. I mean, it's such a jacking, right? And here I'd like to just point out that one of the great books ever written is the John Perkins book. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. You may not be able to actually see the title very well.
You can now.
Okay. John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. This was an insider who basically spilled the beans as a whistleblower on exactly what these globalists do worldwide in taking over countries and how they've taken over the world one nation at a time. Now, he does have a backup second book, which is almost as good, if not, some people might say better. And so it's called The Secret History of the American Empire. And it's Economic Hitmen, Jackals, and the Truth About Global Corruption. Gary, you and I have talked about John Perkins many times. These are his probably two most famous books, and they detail exactly what you and I are talking about. Now, I'd like to make the connection to your research because I'm not sure that everyone is thinking this, right? What you and I are trying to expose is that these globalists, these rulers who run our planet, who have taken over 160 nations and have 160 central banks worldwide, and they're raping 160 nations of all of their natural resources. It's this of this banking cabal, this globalist mafia that's taken over the planet, that runs all the banks and all the corporations. These are the reptilians that, Gary, your research is trying to expose. These are the people that look human, but are not human.
Yeah, they have human bodies, but they don't have human souls.
And they've taken over our planet, and they're literally enslaving humanity with their leadership at the top running the world.
Yeah, they go into a country where the people don't have clean drinking water. They're struggling with enough to eat and make an income. They come in there and they loan the country all kinds of money, and they build up all kinds of fancy buildings and everything. And when they're done, the people still don't have clean drinking water. They employ very few of their people in the industry there. They bring in specialists from other countries to fill all the good jobs. And the people continue to suffer in that country, sometimes even worse, where they take away some of their land and habitat, where they live. Like they live partly in the jungle, and they take part of that land and cut down the trees and stuff. So those people have less land, and they make it even worse for the people that live there.
So how bad is this problem, Gary? They've just taken over 160 countries and have installed puppet presidents or puppet dictators or puppet rulers that essentially work for them, who are running their nation pretty much no different than the United States has been in the past, with its many presidents who seem to be working for this same group, and United States being one of these 160 nations that have been completely occupied by these globalists who look human but are not human. How bad is this problem?
Yeah, we could try to explain what they're doing in Ukraine. I mean, what you hear about it is certainly not the truth. At one time, Ukraine was an area of the Soviet Union where Stalin ruled it, and during the 1930s, the people tried to protest and stop it and wanted to get out of the Soviet Union. And Stalin went in there, and he brought his soldiers in there, and they took all the grain out of the country in the late fall. And so in the wintertime, all kinds of people in that country starved to death, or they had no food, and they killed 1 to 3 million people. I think they called it the Holodomor or something like that. I might have the word slightly off. So they trained a lot of these people to hate Russians. Okay, then later, and Stalin died or went out of power, and the next guy came in, Khrushchev. Now, the 1953, the Soviet Union was still going with the same territories and states and all that, and Ukraine was still part of the Soviet Union. But the people were anti-Russian, and Khrushchev decided that he's going to give some of the Russian land to Ukraine and make their state in the Soviet Union a little bit bigger and give them more land. And he did it on the eastern side. And so the area of Ukraine now had more territory, and he thought that people would be less anti-Russian if he did that. So now, and figure that they own all the land anyway, so it really wouldn't matter, Khrushchev thought. So now fast forward to 89, the Soviet Union breaks up, they go broke or whatever, and all the add-on territories like Ukraine and Poland and Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and all these areas that were the Soviet Union, they all secede from the Soviet Union. And now there's just Russia and all these separate countries now. So now Ukraine.
That was the time of Ronald Reagan?
What?
Ronald Reagan was in charge of the U.S. at the time.
I think so, yeah. So the Iron Curtain went down and the Soviet Union broke up. So now Ukraine's a much bigger country. But the eastern part of it is all Russian-speaking people that used to be part of Russia. So now Ukraine's a bigger country, but half the people that live in it are Russian and half the people that live in it are Ukraine. But they got together and they formed a government, and they had half Russians and half Ukrainians in there, and it worked out okay for a while. And then the reptilians from the U.S. wanted to be anti-Russian and wanted to hate Russia. And some of those Ukrainians still hated Russia back from what they did to them in the 1930s. So they did an Orange Revolution or something, and they did a coup in the country. And they threw out all the Russian people in the government, threw them out of the government, and took over the country. And they even tried to make a law that you weren't allowed to speak Russian. The Russian language and the Ukrainian language, I guess, are similar. And they went anti-Russian on these people. What's that? There's a southern part of it. I forget what that's called. That succeeded, and there was a Russian base in there, Crimea. And so they voted 97% to become part of Russia again. And there was a Russian military base there. So that part succeeded. And then two other areas says, well, if we can't be in the government, we don't want to be part of Ukraine anymore. So they succeeded. I forget the exact names of the eastern part of Ukraine. And so they decided to be a separate country. And so Ukraine started taking the military weapons and shelling them. And at first they fought back and they beat Ukraine real bad because they weren't trained militarily. And they thought that, they would get them to leave them alone and they would be their own country. But the U.S. brought in people and trained them and built up their military and kept shelling them. And it went on and until they were getting shelled so much that Putin couldn't take it, where these Russian people were a target of the Ukrainians. They wouldn't leave them alone. So that's kind of what started the Ukraine war.
Well, so these globalists, I know that, back in the time of what was it, Obama's second term, because Obama was obviously a puppet of this globalist group, these reptilians.
Yeah, he has a draconian soul.
So Obama has a draconian soul. He's part of the most evil group of reptilians that you've identified as Draco or Draco reptilian, draconian. And I think they just employed the same tactics that they've done for the other 160 countries they've taken over. They did the same thing in Ukraine, and they installed their own puppet. I don't know if it was originally Zelensky, but obviously it's been Zelensky.
They went through 3 leaders before
him. Yeah, they've installed their own puppet, and then
the first guy was the country had to decide to make a better deal with Russia or make a better deal with the EU. And Russia offered them a better financial deal for the company to trade more with Russia. And of course, the draconians in the United States hated that, and they wanted the leader to favor the EU.
Right.
So they forced a coup, and the guy had to flee the country.
So what they did in Ukraine is exactly what they've done with every other nation that they've taken over. And I think they're positioning themselves as best they can because they want Russia.
But there's a lot more. Ukraine had a big underground child trafficking system. They had underground bases, and they had I think as many as 20 medical labs making toxins and viruses to make people sick and all that, and make adrenochrome and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And Russia in the war was exposing all that. And so they kept feeding Ukraine more and more money to fight Russia during this war that started in 22. They had little chance to win the war. I mean, their country half the size of Russia in population.
No chance.
Yeah, and Russia had much more modern weapons. But they just kept feeding him more money, and they had this Azmov, or I can't say the word right, a battalion that was all draconians, and they were controlling the country and kept preaching to everybody to be anti-Russian. And they were making up all the lies that Russia's doing all this evil stuff that actually they were doing. And then all the money that was coming in, the top draconians were pocketing half of it, and they were taking a lot of the weapons and selling them on the open market to other terrorist groups like the cartels in Mexico, and even Russia bought some of the weapons. And some of them they sold to European countries. So all this aid they were given, half of it was being stolen by the reptilians there. And they wanted to keep these labs up and keep the child trafficking going. And part of that was in the Russian area. So that then, Putin exposed it right away and stopped it. And they didn't like that. And they kept putting their troops in there to try to take over the Russian area. I mean, the Russian people lived there for hundreds of years, owned the land, had all their houses there. How's Ukraine supposed to come in and take the land and kick the Russians out that lived there for hundreds of years? Just because they're Russian? And try to keep that land as Ukraine's land and kick the people out. I mean, that doesn't work out. So they had an obvious war, Russia being the good side, but they preach all over in the media that Russia invaded for no reason, and they're cruel, and they're killing women and children.
Oh,
And all.
they've completely demonized Russia,
Right.
and they're propping up Ukraine so high in the media that their entire sort of brainwashed left-leaning Democrats, all of them have their Ukrainian flags out around America now. I mean, it's bizarre. You drive down the street, and the left Dems across America, they've got their rainbow flag out and their Ukrainian flag out. I mean, everyone has been brainwashed to believe that Ukraine is in the right and Russia is in the wrong. Now, Russia this whole time said, don't bring your UN and NATO troops and missiles and weaponry near the Russian border. And they kept bringing their stuff closer and closer. And Russia said, don't cross this line. They crossed this line, and that was the end. But
yeah, they want to install nuclear weapons right on Russia's border.
Right on the border.
Yeah, what would the U.S. do if Russia went into Mexico and installed nuclear weapons right next to California and Arizona?
It's like the Cuban Missile Crisis. Yeah. But, Ukraine, I think, was a super deep state stronghold. You're right. I've read a lot and seen a lot about how they turned it super dark. And it was drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, massive money laundering schemes, human trafficking, child trafficking. It was massive factories underground for like bioweapons labs and adrenochrome factories. Apparently, Ukraine was like one of the worst. It became, because of the globalists, one of the worst strongholds of the globalists. Just dark evil.
Yeah. And on top of that, if that side of the country, if it has all Russian people living there for hundreds of years, I mean, just because Khrushchev gave that part of the country to Ukraine and made it bigger, if they want to keep that whole country together, they got to let that side of the country be part of the government and part of the leadership and everything. They thought that they could kick all the Russians out of the government and say you couldn't speak Russian, and they think they could take all that land and kick the Russians out and have a big Ukraine with all the land for them. And the Russian side has all kinds of mineral rights that they want, and I think it's also a good area for growing crops too.
Well, so did you want to talk about a few other things before we end this video? I know you were thinking we could talk more about some of the other corrupt, sort of evil ways that these globalists are enslaving humanity and torturing humanity and raping humanity.
They're doing horrible in the medical. They want everybody to be sick and pay to treat their illness instead of curing anybody. And they convinced everybody to believe that you catch germs from other people and get sick. And there's a bunch of researchers that claim it doesn't work that way, that you only get sick from outside toxins and inside toxins from your body, and also from like electromagnetic radiation can make you sick. And they got everybody wearing masks and taking jabs for all different illnesses to try to prevent it. And none of that's supposed to work. and now they're trying to lower the food supply. They're claiming all kinds of chickens got the bird flu, and they're just making it up and killing all kinds of chickens and raising the price of chickens and eggs like crazy. And then they're claiming, oh, it spread to the dairy herd in Nevada. We got to kill all the cows in Nevada. That's supposed to be all made up.
Well,
You know,
what they've done, right? What they've done is they've built an architecture in our society through the media and politics and big pharma and big health and all these World Health Organizations, and then you've got the education system. They're doing is they're indoctrinating us, right? They're getting us to believe they want us to believe. And in this medical world, in the health world, they've gotten us to believe whatever they tell us. And
they're trying to get young children before they're 2-year-old to take like 70 different jabs to prevent all different diseases.
They've got us brainwashed into thinking
that just
that
makes
the system
sick all their lives.
Yeah, they've got us brainwashed into thinking that the system is good and positive and beneficial, and there's no way that we could steer you wrong, right? Everything we tell you is for your benefit, for your health. And what you and I have learned, and many others are talking about on the internet today, is what if this system was designed to make you sick, keep you sick, and profit from you by providing ongoing, prolonged sick care?
Yeah, we pay the most per person for medical in the world, and I think we're below 40th on the healthiest country.
I mean, we call it health care, and we think that, going to your doctor is a good thing, and going to the hospital is a good thing, and taking the meds they tell you are a good thing, and solving your problem their way is a good thing. What if the whole thing was designed by these people who are not human, who are in human bodies but with reptilian souls? And what if their entire game plan, what if their entire goal was to deceive you into trusting them, because what they've set up is a system designed to make you sick and keep you sick and provide sick care to profit from you.
That's exactly what they're doing. And there's a lot of people are sick all their lives, and then when they retire, they spend all their money on medical, and they die early and don't even get a retirement.
And we could go on for the next half hour or hour. We don't have the time, but we could go on and talk about the various ways that these evil people are torturing humanity and making humanity suffer and killing humanity and blaming it on this or that. And it's unfortunate when you realize the truth. It's a lot more hardcore than people realize. It's intentional. There are no coincidences. And all these systems that are set up in place to make people suffer and work harder and hurt you and your family and make it so hard for you and your family. It's all about their profit. It's all about making money for them at your expense.
Right. And the people with reptilian souls like do something bad against the black people and enslave them sort of over the years, and then they blame it on the white people when it's the reptilian Reptilian Souls that did it, not the white people, or
Yeah,
vice versa.
we've talked about the central banking and the ongoing interest and the inflation. We've talked about the various types of mechanisms they use to financially enslave us and keep people in financial slavery, where you go home at the end of the month and you barely have enough money to pay your bills. You barely have enough money to pay your taxes. You barely have enough money to do this or that, or buy your kid a Christmas present or a birthday present. You barely have enough money to pay your utilities. And you've got to go back to work to make enough money to just barely be able to pay next month.
All right, let's end it at that, I guess. We got in about 35, 36 minutes.
It's just, it's unfortunate. It's a sad truth. And what you and I are trying to expose is what is behind all of this evil that's enslaving humanity. And Gary, your research has suggested that it's not human and it's not from this planet, and yet they look human.
Yeah, they're disguised as us.
They're disguised as us, wearing human suits, but they've found a way to make it very complicated, very difficult to identify.
Yeah, they put their souls. Supposedly, you can see their aura and see that their aura is different. Humans have a colorful aura because they have empathy for others. The reptilian soul doesn't have empathy, and it has a real dull aura.
And the ultimate goal, Gary, is to find a way to get the word out, get enough of humanity thinking about it and concerned about it, and then acting on it so that we can try to identify these people with non-human souls.
And get them out of power and out of our society. All right, end on that.
All right, sending much love and light out to everyone out there. John of the Light, Gary Peter Carlson.
Thanks for watching.